I'm Raj Kumar with Devex here in Brussels at the European Development Days, joined by a special guest, Bieron, who is the Senior Director for Global Public Policy at eBay. And our members might be wondering, what's eBay doing at an event like the European Development Days? You just gave a very interesting talk about how your company and others are trying to help small businesses and entrepreneurs in the developing world get connected to the global market. Tell us a little bit about that. How does that fit into a development agenda?
Well, first of all, Raj, thank you for having me on here. I appreciate talking to Devex. And also, I'm excited to have been able to be here today at European Development Days. eBay cares about development because eBay is a global marketplace. And as a global marketplace, we're empowering entrepreneurs all over the world. Now, a lot of people would think maybe that people who sell on eBay are selling from the United States or selling from Western Europe, and they are. Hundreds of thousands of them, micro businesses in many cases. But we're also able, it's a global marketplace, meaning there are buyers and sellers literally just about everywhere in the world. And our message here today is that sustainable small business development is being empowered by the internet in a way that it's never been possible before. So what I've been talking about today is how globalization can now serve a kind of business, a very, very small business, businesses of 5 and 10 employees, in a way that its global trade has never been able to serve before, and that this is revolutionary.
And the idea is revolutionary in some ways at a forum like this because there's a lot of talk, it's a hot trend to talk about the micro-entrepreneur. But usually what we think of in the development community, we think of the micro-entrepreneur selling something to their neighbors locally, right? And I think that may be a limiting vision. And so you're bringing this whole idea that this could be a global...
Yeah, that was one of the points that I made in our talk, was the concept of localism, we think has been, in some sense, should be transformed by what the internet does for the economy.
Right.
So localism in the traditional sense of empowering people to build businesses locally, serve their local community, and how that is so sustainable. I mean, that's a positive vision, but actually we think it misses the fact that what the internet now means is that localism can also be global at the same time.
Yeah.
Because what you have is now the ability for any small business to stay where they are, develop a product that has value to customers in the world, but not to billions of people. Because of the internet, they can have customers, just thousands, but those thousands of customers can be distributed anywhere in the world. And if they're integrated through technology and through old-fashioned things like shipping, and dealing with government customs and duties, if that is simplified enough, you can actually have the power of the global economy be able to sustain economic development at the very most local level with the very smallest businesses, so that globalization, we think in the future, can mean it's not just about giant multi-billion-dollar businesses engaging in global trade where they ship things in entire ships.
Right.
But instead, small businesses who are in India or China or Indonesia or Africa and the United States and every country in Europe, and they're engaging in global trade with a business of 5 people, but able to sustain a business because the global economy can be brought to their doorstep through the power of the internet.
It's a big vision, and there's obviously the question, why isn't it happening today? And obviously one issue is getting the internet to these places. People need access to it. But the internet is not enough, right? You mentioned shipping, you mentioned customs. Tell us a little bit about, what is it that you're here pushing for that would enable
One of our points to say is that actually it is happening today. The reason why we started down this path of looking at what government can do to make this happen more was stumbling over the fact that it was actually happening already. When we literally stumbled on the fact that 20% of the business going on over eBay in the United States, ebay.com, was actually cross-border. Okay. That there was a huge amount of exporting being done by businesses of 5 and 6 people. We're like, wow. I mean, literally, I'm a former trade staffer from Capitol Hill, where the world of trade in retail was all about imports, first of all, and was about giant companies trying to make sure that they could have access to foreign markets, which is fine. I mean, that's globalization that has its place in the world.
Right. Trade, right?
We were suddenly looking at the data and saying, oh my God, there's like a huge amount of trade going on already. And we know by very small businesses, because those are the ones who use our platform.
Yeah.
So then we started to look at why, and what are the barriers that are keeping it from happening more? And what we learned, we looked to an outside economist to look at our data, and we learned that, number one, the reason why is that the fundamental internet technology and our payment service reduced a number of traditional barriers to trade in a way that meant that where before really small micro businesses simply couldn't participate, now they can. But what we also learned was that various barriers related to shipping and customs and duties and dealing with customer service, language is a bigger issue for a small business engaging in global trade than for a giant business. And the complexity is like, if you're a billion-dollar business, you don't deal with your customer in the other country yourself, you'll hire an intermediary. If you're a business of 4 people and you're American and you're trying to sell to Brazil, you got to handle that yourself. So payments and language are things that I think our services are helping overcome, but the customs and the duties, the fact that a lot of the forms to do these exports, they're not available online. Like, it's fine if you're a giant business and you hire an intermediary to handle the paperwork, but if you're a small business and you're trying to sell globally and you have to deal with this paperwork, it becomes terribly difficult. So we're here to, number one, spread the word. This isn't just a vision. This is happening, number one. Number two, it is wealth creating and job creating. Not just in America, not just in Europe, it's wealth creating and job creation in the developing world as well. It's sustainable development, it's very, very small business, local development, and lastly, that there are things government could do to deal with trade friction that in the world of globalization and trade agreements, it's called trade facilitation. Right. And honestly, when you're engaged in big trade agreements, trade facilitation is like the boringest topic. It's like nobody wants to handle trade facilitation. It's how do we streamline the customs duties? And that's because a lot of that, honestly, was done years ago for big business. What we're going to government to say is that that whole trade facilitation thing, there's now an entirely new kind of trade being done by an entirely new kind of business who's very, very small but enabled by the internet. Spend some time on simplifying that, because one, you're going to get real economic development benefits, you're going to get growth, and it's the kind of growth you want to get, because you want to tell the world and you want to tell your people globalization and trade works for everybody, or at least it can. And so we're here to hopefully inform people of this so that they will, when they're talking to government, they'll say, one of the things government can do to promote economic development is promote customs simplification, reduce, improve postal systems, improve shipping systems so that they're more connected by technology, so that when you ship from one country to the other, the likelihood that the package gets lost is much less.
It's these kinds of basic things that stop a micro-entrepreneur, right?
Exactly.
Becoming a global
But
business.
to think about it, if you streamline those things and they all worked well, at the end of the day, you would have a world where a retailer who has a small shop anywhere in the world could actually participate in the global economy the same as a giant business, a multi-billion-dollar business, and in fact, if they were a retailer, they would actually be more global. Because most traditional retailers, their whole business model is built around building big stores and building big warehouses and shipping things in entire ships to a big country like the United States and then distributing them. And these small businesses would actually be engaged in a much more global business model, which would basically be you have a small business somewhere, but you use technology to reach a few customers everywhere.
So eBay is trying to democratize trade, is trying to support and advocate on behalf of the small business, the micro-entrepreneur in the developing world, and it's good for eBay's business. That's what I love about it. It fits so well.
We are out there advocating for the smallest business, because of the fact that our marketplace, that's what most of this stuff is.
And that's where your growth is going to come, right? So
I mean, it just happens to be the fact that most of what's sold on eBay marketplaces around the world, there is a component that is consumers selling things. And what's funny is that a lot of times, those consumers, some of them become little micro businesses. They do. Or maybe they have a job change in their traditional job and they used to sell some things on eBay and suddenly they're sort of almost pushed into, well, I need to have a way to make money. We tend to be the first step. Now our bigger sellers, who again in the world of globalization are tiny businesses. I mean, these are a 50-person business in the world of global trade is so small that the world doesn't even know they exist yet.
And they don't have a lobbyist advocating for their trade facilitation.
Those are big guys. They are the ones who are selling most of the stuff. And so yeah, we absolutely are all in the business when it comes to talking to government about making the systems work for them. Because they sell so much stuff on our site, we want them to succeed. Now we'd love giant businesses to be using our services too, and we have some that do, and that's great too, but we're always going to be a business that's about the micro seller, the micro retailer who's employing a dozen people, because that's the heart of our marketplace, and we're proud of it, and so we advocate on government policy in the US, in Europe, and a number of Asian countries, because it's good for them and that means it's good for us. But the development aspect of it really is a new message for eBay when it comes to policy, because it's only recently where we've done the kind of studies that show what are the policy barriers. What about how duties are handled are standing in the way of a small business more than a big business.
Well, maybe it may be new for your company. It's also new for the development agenda. Thank you for being here, for putting it on the agenda here at European Development Days, and for joining us at Devex.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Appreciated the opportunity to be here, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other more, because it's not something that's going to go away for our business. It's really only going to grow.